Hi, I'm Andrew Maraniss, and I'm the author of a new book called Singled Out, which is a biography of Glenn Burke, who was the first openly gay Major League Baseball player. And I'm really thrilled to be joined now by Tony Kemp of the Oakland A's, a fantastic baseball player who I got to see when he was playing here at Vanderbilt and was SEC Player of the Year as a member of the Vandy Boys, was drafted by the Houston Astros, has also played for the Chicago Cubs, and just a dynamic player with the A's now. But the thing I really admire about Tony, even more than his ability as a baseball player, is the type of person he is and the things he's doing to make this a better country to live in for all people, and the work that he does off the field. So Tony, thanks so much for taking some time to talk today.
No, man, I'm not trying to tear up before I do this interview, but I appreciate that. Those are some nice words. Yeah, anything you need, I'm here for you.
Well, that's really nice of you, and those words are well deserved. Before we talk about your Plus 1Effect program and the other things you're doing, what is life like for a Major League Baseball player? As we record this, it's November, right before Thanksgiving. What are you doing this time of year?
Yeah, so no matter what day I usually end the season, unfortunately it was in the ALDS this year, but I usually give myself a month off of no working out, nothing, maybe going on walks with my wife and my dog, but that's it. So this is week 2 of back in the gym. Ro Coleman, who actually went to Vanderbilt as well,
Yes.
he's actually co-managing a gym that's off of Armory Drive, like Hundred Oaks Mall. You know that area.
Yeah.
And so I've been the only one to be able to go in that gym and stuff, COVID restrictions. So I've been blessed to be able to have Ro allow me to go in there. It's been great. Now it's time to get back in shape and do the things that I need to do to get ready for the season again. Once you get back in the gym, I usually give myself a month, because once I get back in the gym, I don't stop until the season ends. So, that's usually why I do that. But, Nashville always has a special place in my heart. It's 3 years living here now in our house here in West Nashville. It's been beautiful. My favorite season is the fall. So I love when I come back home. It's October, and my birthday is Halloween. So anytime I come back home, it always feels good. But, right now, just getting back in the gym. Me and my wife, with COVID, we haven't eaten at any restaurant since March. So everything's been takeout and in to-go containers. But, just hoping everyone keeps staying safe and healthy.
Absolutely. Well, at least there's some good restaurants to get takeout from here in Nashville.
Yeah.
Speaking of COVID, I mean, you're such an energetic player. It seems like you feed off your teammates and the fans. What was it like for you guys playing without fans this year? What were the biggest challenges, and were there any sort of unexpected pluses to playing without fans?
I'll start with the negatives first, I guess, and then I'll go to the positives.
Right.
The negatives were just, there's no energy, momentum swings in games. You don't have the crowd behind your back. Especially when we were playing the White Sox in the playoffs, and home field advantage is a big deal. I mean, it was kind of an even playing surface.
Yeah.
And especially playing the Astros, going to Dodger Stadium. I mean, it was a completely different atmosphere. Having to move sites, not having fans, especially when that crowd noise that they pumped in, whenever it stopped, it felt so eerie just being out there. But the crack of the bat was beautiful. When each team is trash talking, you can hear each individual person in their voice. So you kind of had to not be as loud this year. So that was a challenge for some guys. But, unfortunately, you couldn't sign autographs and, meet new kids. And, that's the joy that I usually get when I, before games, after games, being able to make someone's day. So there was a couple giveaways I did on Twitter, and one guy was going to get a signed bat off eBay, and I ended up just sending him a signed bat anyway because it was a fake signature, and
Oh gosh.
it wasn't even my bat. So, I mean, just to add to 2020, it's been an overall whirlwind, but, we're making it through day by day.
Yeah. The other news of the week as we tape this was that the Marlins have hired Kemp as their general manager, which is history making move. What are your thoughts about a woman general manager in Major League Baseball for the first time?
Oh my gosh, I love it. I mean, especially being, of her race and what she's about. I mean, my wife is, she's half Asian, and so she sees things like that. And going into baseball, you just see so many things that, especially what the Giants are doing with hiring females as the first base coach. And, it's a different era. It's a different time that we're living in right now. And I'm happy that the Marlins actually took that step in baseball to do that. And I mean, you look at her resume and she's done so many great things across her career. She's very, highly deserved of that. And, you think about, females or girls who are growing up and playing softball and know that they have a place for themselves in baseball at the highest level. Now you're seeing that transition, and I think it's beautiful. I think it's great because sometimes you only get one-sided opinions, and now you're getting a female perspective from it too. And she's more than qualified for the job, and I'm excited to see what she does with it.
Yeah, that's terrific. And that example you mentioned just today in our family, we're excited. My daughter's picture is on the front page of the Tennessean. There's an article about what Kamala Harris becoming first woman vice president means for little girls in
Huge.
Nashville.
Great.
And so,
That's great. I love that. Tell her I said congrats.
I'll tell her. She's so excited, and what a role model for her. So I wanted to talk about the Plus One Effect program that you have, and I know the genesis for this was with the killing of George Floyd, and your reaction to that. And I was wondering if you could take us back to those days earlier this spring when that killing happened and the video was going around social media and the effect that had on you.
Yeah, I mean, the murder of George Floyd, I think, sent shockwaves around the world. Especially our nation happening, where it did, and it was tragic. I mean, being Black and being in America, it's it's a different situation. It's a different perspective for people like us. So, once the murder happened, my uncle, we have a group chat with all our cousins, my brother, a couple of my nephews, and my mom she's one of 11. So okay. I have 6 uncles, and we hopped on a Zoom call, and the Zoom call lasted about 2 to 3 hours, and there were some tears, there was some anger, there was some frustration. Just because, you do so much, and I feel like, Black voices haven't been heard in the way that, they should be heard. Mm-hmm. And so, my uncle, he's actually the second youngest of the family. He's number 10 of the 11. And he's an engineer in St. Louis. And, while we were on the call, we were talking through it, and that's when he just said, it almost starts with a conversation of, to one other person, how to bring a positive impact to your community, a positive conversation about race, not getting upset, but just kind of voicing your opinion. It's almost like a plus one effect, a trickle down effect. And, I think when I was listening to him, I think the whole plus one effect kind of, it's kind of sparked a light bulb in my head. And, I remember I didn't sleep that much that night. The next day, I contacted my agency and one of the guys that does my PR stuff, and I just said, and Breaking Tea, we've actually worked with like Hugs for Homers and a bunch of other stuff in the past. And, I said, what about this plus one effect? And I kind of explained it, and I said, I'm going to go on Instagram and I'm going to kind of say, let's be honest, let's talk about what's been going on. And I mean, it just blew up, like having all these conversations with people, and, it still hasn't stopped. And I think the best part about it is I just said, I don't want this to be a hot spot topic. I don't want this to be something that lasts for a month or two. Like, And, now that started back in June, and now it's November and people are still talking about it, still reaching out. And, that's that fire that we talked about. And just being able to bring it to the A's and bring it to MLB and being able to talk about it. And, especially for me, it's being able to just voice my opinion and say how I feel. And I think a lot of people respected it just to be able to talk about it in a certain situation. And, it's almost like talking politics with somebody. It's like somebody's going to get upset in the conversation, right?
Right.
And I wanted to go into each conversation and explain it to somebody like I was explaining race to a kindergartner, someone who's never been exposed to it. They might have lived in a bubble, never been exposed to anything, any racism toward their own selves in the world, and just be able to go from there. And, like I said, it's been real positive. My wife, Michelle, has been helping out so much I think we responded to now over like 500 to 600 people on social media. And
Wow.
it's been great. I think that, especially the whole Jacob Blake murders shooting as well. It's, when we stood out, of the games, we were in Arlington at the time. And, like I said, I just said, this is a lot bigger than just baseball. And it's a lot bigger than just sticking to sports. I mean, we have the biggest platform there is in the world. I mean, everyone loves an athlete. Everyone loves a superstar. And, for some people I had to explain, I said, you can't love us on the field when we're doing great, making double plays, but you can't hate us for having our own circulated opinions about something. You have your opinions about something, we have our opinions. Like you shouldn't be able to hate me because my opinion differs from yours, but I'm still your favorite player.
Right.
So just being able to go along things like that, I mean, it's been great. Being able to sell T-shirts, I think we've sold over 10,000 T-shirts, and I'll say it has exceeded my expectations.
Wow, well, that's unbelievable. And so many things you mentioned there. I wanted to react to a couple of follow-up questions. I thought it's just amazing that you took the emotions that you felt that day and turned it into action. I think a lot of times people wonder, well, what can I do? And you decided to actually do something. Is that the first time you've done that? Did you grow up with a family that was, would get involved when they saw things that needed to be changed, or where did that come from?
Yeah. And, that's even now, anytime I hang out with my wife's friends or anybody, like, Tony's type B, I'm just late. That's just who I am. I'm a very energetic person, like on the field and stuff, but I'm a homebody. Like I love being at home and hanging out on the couch, watching a documentary, making some hot chocolate. I'm a homebody and I don't really like confrontation. I'm not that kind of person. And so when all these things came to light, I kind of, maybe it was just God speaking to me saying, hey, you need to step up. You need to say something. You have this platform. You need to use it. And talking to my brother and my agency, I just said, hey, I'm planning on doing this. What do you guys think about it? Is this too much? And everybody was just like, no. Like my wife was fully supportive with me and said, I think that, you're a person. I don't talk a lot, but I think when I do talk, I think people do listen. I will say
Yes.
that I feel like, and so when it all came about, I mean, so many positive things came from it. We just kept rolling with it. And, some people that we responded to stayed in their ways. And I said, hey, the thing is about, you're not going to change everybody you talk to, but at least you had the conversation of talking to somebody and saying, hey, this is how I view it. Black people have been oppressed. There is redlining. There is some unfortunate events that go against Black people. They are pulled over 3 times as likely as a white person in America. These are just facts. So just saying that and just talking to people. But like I said, it's been phenomenal. I'm happy with how it's been going.
Yeah, and then, inherent in what you're saying is that you talk to people. And I don't know if everyone who's watching this knows, but you put it out there on social media during the middle of a Major League Baseball season, in the middle of a pandemic. You're on a new team. I mean, you could have easily said, I don't have time to deal explaining racism to people all over the country, but
Yeah, and
you
I think
engaged in these conversations. And as you said, you maybe didn't change everyone, but do you have some favorite examples of some of the interactions that you did have with people?
yeah, and I think you just saying that is so, like, I think my wife was like, you have to realize, like, you're doing something that people don't do.
Right.
Like, it was so taboo that a major league player would come out and say and do these things and take action. And I was like, for myself, it's just a label. Like, obviously baseball is what I do. God's blessed me with many talents, but like there's more there's more to myself than just baseball, right? And like, I'm a person, I have feelings. And
Mm-hmm.
um but I think my favorite story is probably there's this lady, Amy, she's a white suburban lady. And she was like, how do I help? Like, I feel like I'm helpless. Like, I feel like I'm in a bubble. I feel like I'm surrounded by a bunch of white people. I don't really interact with a lot of black people during my day. And I just said, it really starts with your inner circle. I said, I'm sure there have been prejudices around a conversation towards a different race or ethnicity while you're talking with your white neighbor. There has to be. And I said, it's all about just whenever that negative comment comes up, it's all about just coming up and saying, hey, that's not right. That's not cool. And I think the biggest part about it is I told people, you're not, you might lose friends over, like, you might lose friends over bringing these topics up because it's very uncomfortable. And I said, you're going to sweat. I said, I sweat a lot whenever I have confrontation. It just, it's not in my norm. And I think when Amy went back and she said that she felt a lot better about connecting to these people and telling them how she felt. And I need to go back on Twitter and actually look at, or Instagram, and actually look at what she said. But, I think leading people to Netflix and seeing 13th. Have you seen 13th? You've
Yes,
seen,
fantastic movie.
and
Everyone
I
should see
think,
that.
and
Yeah.
I think it's a great documentary if you haven't been exposed to like racism or what blacks have gone through. And people talk about, oh, slavery was so long ago. No, it wasn't that long ago. Like, it
Mhm.
wasn't that long ago. So like, just being able to say like, hey, these are the facts, these are kind of what our ancestors went through. And we still think that we're working toward we need to go toward a positive direction. And so I personally, I think that people are understanding it and seeing it more now. So
Yeah.
we're moving forward. We're moving forward.
So one thing you mentioned there, and I think sometimes sports fans forget it, that you're a person too, right? What an obvious fact that is. But and a lot of times in culture these days, people will talk about should sports and politics mix, and
Yeah.
I write books that are sports, nonfiction, history, and social justice related for middle school and high school kids. My first book was about Perry Wallace, who was the first black basketball player in the SEC. He played at Vanderbilt in the late 60s. Um, and I explained to kids, that was a political decision prior to Perry to keep African American people from playing basketball in the SEC. My second book was about the first U.S. Olympic men's basketball team, which played at the Nazi Olympics in 1936. And there's
Great.
no greater example of sports and politics mixing than the Nazi Olympics. And in both of those stories, the key takeaway is the danger of being a bystander. When I talked to Perry, I was expecting him to tell me stories about how difficult it was to play at Mississippi State, or Ole Miss or Auburn. And it was. And he thought he might get killed on the court, shot and killed just for playing a basketball game. But what he told me is the most difficult part of his experience was on his own campus, at our alma mater at Vanderbilt, where he was ignored and felt very isolated as a student. And that was 4 long years of that, where he wasn't treated as an equal person. And when I would interview his white classmates, they would often say, well, I wasn't the one that called him the N-word, and I wasn't the one that slammed the door in his face, and I wasn't the one that kicked him out of church just because he was black. I didn't do anything. And then they recognized they just told me that they didn't do anything, and they were bystanders.
That's the problem.
and that's the lesson of the Holocaust too, is the danger of not standing up in the face of fascism. And
Yes.
so when people say, should sports and politics mix, I say, if the lesson of civil rights movement and of the Holocaust is to speak up when you see injustice, how can you tell anyone, whether they're a regular person or a professional athlete, that they shouldn't be able to use their voice?
What's wrong with that? Everyone has an opinion.
Right.
Yes, everyone has an opinion. And, I think that obviously, with the sitting out for the games, I think it was I still don't think my head is wrapped around what has happened there. That is going to be something that I don't have kids yet, but I'm sure when I have a kid and they get high school, or they're going to have a report, and it might be about that. It might be about hey, your parents went through sitting out two baseball games because of the injustices happening in America. And it's that's the action that we need to see. And, it still gives me chills talking about it. And it was just one of those things where, like I said, it's bigger than sports at the time. And something needed to happen. And we raised over $1 million because a lot of the guys donated their salaries for those 2 days towards Black communities. And that's the stuff we're talking about. And especially with the Players Alliance and Curtis Granderson and CC Sabathia and Cameron Maben and everybody who's coming forward, who knows that they have a huge voice. And, I think the problem with people is they think they have a long time on this earth. It's no, this thing is going time stops for nobody. Right. And so, the biggest thing with Tim Corbin in college is he's there's no do-overs. There's no do-overs. And so why not do something in your power to how you would always do it if you're by yourself? So,
yeah. I know you were the Roberto Clemente Award nominee from the A's this year. And he said, if you don't do things to help other people, you're wasting your time on this earth. Same sentiment that you're expressing there. Although, I think the other thing that fans need to understand is that there is a risk as a professional athlete. When you do step up, you're kind of welcoming, or at least inviting, the arrows that might come your way from fans, racist fans, from media members who might not understand what you're trying to do. Maybe even risking alienating some teammates that haven't been enlightened the way that they should. Did you consider that at all? And in what ways do you feel that athletes now are weighing the risks and the rewards? And it seems like, given the platform that so many athletes have, they're saying, I'm going to go for it. I'm going to use my voice regardless of what risks there may be.
Yeah. And, even, it's a good point that you brought up. Excuse me. And even in the group text with the Players Alliance and all the Black players that are in it, that is definitely, there were probably 30% of the Black players who were concerned with, this is how I feed my family. Obviously I want to speak out. I only have 30 days in the big leagues, and, I'm going into arbitration this year. So it was almost like the perfect storm, because it was a time where I felt, and I was with the team, with the A's, who let me just go at it and just be myself and say these things. And to be able to see the GM and the president wearing the plus 1Effect shirt, it speaks volumes. But and like you said, knowing that people won't always understand you, and that's okay. I think if you're coming from a genuine place of, you're sincere about a certain topic and you're passionate about it, people have no other way but to try to understand you. And I think the biggest part about what this whole thing is, put yourself in someone else's shoes. Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter white, Black, Hispanic, doesn't matter. Put yourself in someone else's shoes and try to see what their everyday life is like. I have a good friend here that says, everybody looks at the world through a different lens, and you have to look at someone else's life through a different lens. My lens is vastly different from how you have a lens in your life, right? So being able to just put yourself out of your body and put it in someone else is what we need to do. And, you know, with all the donations and being able to give back to all these communities of, you know, people who, you know, couldn't afford equipment for baseball in these communities, it's, you know, it's huge. You know, it's a lot. I know a lot of people, I know a lot of minorities want to get involved in baseball, but it's expensive. So, so I get it. I understand.
Okay. And it sounds like one of the themes that you're talking a lot about throughout this interview too is empathy. And you know, that's in putting yourself in other people's shoes and understanding their lives. And one thing that I've tried to do in my new book about Glenn Burke is to let people know what that experience must have been like
Oh, I could not
for
imagine.
an African-American man who was the first openly gay Major League Baseball player. And, you know, I'm not asking you to name names or anything like that, but I mean, is the topic of gay players discussed at all in the major leagues? Is it essentially known that there are some guys who are, but they haven't come out? Or, you know, what is the state of this issue in Major League Baseball right now?
Yeah, you know, I think in clubhouses, it's, you know, I did a interview with Colin McHugh, one of my former teammates, and I think he hit the nail, you know, on the head. And, you know, when people would ever say, you know, the F word referring to gay people, and whenever he would hear that word, he would say, hey, don't say that. You can't say that. And I would always hear it, but it never really resonated with me until I took the interview with him. And we talked on the podcast for about an hour. And it's one of those things now to where in our clubhouse, it was one of those things that wasn't talked about, but we knew, like, if someone was, say someone was gay and they were to come out, I don't think that there would be any backlash toward that person. You know, I feel like we're in an era now is you are who you are and you need to be accepted. I feel like it's even harder to live with that in your heart all the time, walking around, you know, knowing that if you come out that you'll be shunned. You know, I hate that feeling for people that, you know, like Burke, who had probably experienced that for a long time. So, you know, it's 2020 now. It's a long time from, you know, what our society has come from. But I feel like the MLB right now has been accepting with it. And I think that moving forward, I feel like if you're a person that needs to, you know, come out, do it, because, you know, I even went back and looked at some of the things he said, and he said, you know, they can't say that a gay player never made it in the big leagues and then the major leagues. And so I said, yeah, that's correct. And, you know, I applaud him for that.
That's right. You know, it's funny you mentioned Colin McHugh. I had tweeted about this book and he responded to it, you know, and said he'd be interested in it. So I'm hoping to get him a copy when it comes out.
Yeah.
Why, of all the things that he could have taken an interest in, why is this something that matters to him? Do you know?
You know, I think because Colin has a high level of empathy, and just because people were using that word, you never know who's that is affecting. And I think that he took those 25 players that were in, those 24 other players that were in the clubhouse, and he said, you know, what happens if one person, you know, might not think or act or be how we are? What if one person is gay, and, you know, just because you're using that word, they might think each day that you use the word, I'm not going to come out because this is what the stigma is in our clubhouse. So him being able to come out and say those things when I was a rookie, and especially in 17 and in 18, you know, he's one of those teammates that, you know, I'd take a bullet for. He's one of those guys that if you're going to go to war, you want in your foxhole.
Yeah. So one of the things that Glenn dealt with, you know, when he wasn't able to really express who he was, his teammates eventually figured it out, you know, and I interviewed Dusty Baker and Davey Lopes and Mike Norris from your team, the A's, and they knew. And like you said, the players supported him. It was more a matter of management that had an issue with it. He was traded from the Dodgers when they found out, and then released from the A's when Billy Martin found out.
Now, I'm curious. I'm sorry. How did they find, like, how did they know? You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah. The thing about Glenn is he was a proud, strong man who wasn't really going to hide everything from everyone, you know? And so in the off season, he lived in the Castro district in San Francisco.
Okay.
Um, During the season, when the guys would go out, you know, partying, he tended not to go with them, or he'd make an excuse to leave early. When the team got back from a road trip and they're all
Okay.
waiting for their ride, he would go to the other end of the airport, you know, and a guy would pick him up and he would sort of be hidden. Some of his minor league teammates had come across some of his boyfriends in the minor leagues. And so players they kind of knew, you know,
Yeah.
and they would try to set him up with women. Dusty Baker told me some funny stories about him trying to set Glenn up with some of his cousins, who he said, I know what fine is, and these women were fine, but Glenn would always say there was something wrong with them, you know? And
Okay.
so,
Okay.
but for Glenn, he always had his head looking over his shoulder. You know, when he would go out, was there someone from the team following him? Was a fan going to see him and expose him? And so he was never able really to relax. And I think about hitting being such a tough skill, maybe the hardest thing in sports. And if you're a baseball player at that highest level, and you can't just be, you know, that I don't think he was ever able to even become the full player that he might have been. And I think as a teammate, if you can encourage everyone to be who they are, it's just going to make your team better, right?
Yeah, and I think that's that's the different stigma that is let the kids play. It's a fine line of what baseball used to be like back in the 90s and the 2000s of like rookie hazing. When rookies come in, you have a bunch of things to do, rookie dress up, how you talk to first year players. And I think the reason, we had such good Astros teams, and especially with the A's too, and obviously the Cubs did it as well. But once those rookies come in, you're right. Like, there's a fine line of, yes, you still need to be treated like a rookie, like you're a first year guy. Like, don't be in your locker, putting your feet up, blasting your own music. But also, like, we want them to be yourself as well, because we know we're going to get the best player that this person is, right? So there's always a fine line with that.
Yeah. Well, Glenn played an interesting role in the Dodgers clubhouse. You know, he came up in the mid to late 70s when they were just, that powerful team year in and year out with Garvey, Lopes, Russell, Say, Baker, Reggie Smith. And he was one of the few young players on the team. And Dusty Baker said there's kind of two kinds of rookies: the ones that just drive you nuts, you want nothing to do with them.
Yeah.
And then the ones that are fun and listen, and they enjoyed Glenn's presence in the clubhouse. He did play music. He was a great dancer. He was really funny. And so he was sort of the life of the clubhouse. When he got traded to the A's, there were players crying in the clubhouse as that happened. And Davey Lopes confronted the general manager and asked, why did you trade him? And they wouldn't really admit why at first until Dusty talked to the trainer. And I guess, trainers know everything, right? And so
trainers know everything.
Trainer told him the truth. In the off season, prior to Glenn being traded, the general manager tried to propose to Glenn to get married. They were going to pay him a bonus equivalent to the average major league salary at that time just to get married. And Glenn said, to a woman. And when they said yes, he said, he wasn't going to have a sham marriage just for public relations purposes.
Wow, that is insane.
Yeah. But, with you playing for the A's, I wanted to mention that Glenn was from the Bay Area. He was born in Oakland, went to Berkeley High School, was a great basketball player. Berkeley High went undefeated his senior year of high school, won the Tournament of Champions, which is the Northern California championship at that time. He actually played college basketball for a semester at Nevada Reno, which is where Colin Kaepernick played. So a school with two sort of history-making athletes. 100%. And then after he was run out of baseball, he played softball. And can you imagine a major league center fielder showing up in these city league softball tournaments in San Francisco, sponsored by gay bars in San Francisco, and was the star of those tournaments?
Dominating.
What's that?
Just dominating.
Yeah, dominating. Show up and although when he first started, and you might experience this too, Tony, with slow pitch, he had a hard time at first, and there were a couple guys that struck him out when he first started playing softball. And then they had something called the Gay Games, which were like Olympics in San
Olympics.
Francisco.
Yeah, I read that.
Yeah, and he won all sorts of medals there. So just a phenomenal athlete. Rupert Jones, the name you may know, who played for the Royals and the Mariners and the A's,
Yeah,
went to same high school as Glenn. He said he's the best athlete that he ever saw.
really.
And their high school had Rupert Jones, Glenn Burke, and Claudell Washington um, right in a row there at that school, as well as Phil Chenier, who was a great NBA player for a while. But they said
Wow.
Glenn was the best of them all. So he really sort of refuted a lot of stereotypes at that time. And it's just such a shame that he was run out of baseball. Junior Gilliam, you know, who's a great Dodger who was from Nashville, that compared him to Willie Mays. And I know all players don't live up to their potential, but Glenn had incredible potential and was never able to fulfill it. And I think that's what the tragedy is of his story.
Yeah. Oh man.
Well, Tony, I really appreciate your time here in the off season. It's great to have you back in Nashville. Hopefully, COVID willing, I'll have a chance to meet you in person, either here or you know, at a game. My challenge is to take my kids to every Major League Baseball stadium before they move off to college. We've hit
Man,
11 together so far. We actually saw you play for the Cubs against the Reds 2 seasons ago. But
that's right. Okay. And so you were at the you saw some of the 2013 season, you said.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, saw you here at Bandy and followed you in the majors. So we're really proud of everything that you do, Tony, and keep it up. I know it's not easy, and I hope you don't feel the weight of the world on your shoulders. But if everybody does their part, just like you say, +1, if we all do our part, we can hopefully make this a better world for ourselves and for the next generation.
Hey, for sure. No, thanks for having me. I mean, this was it's a great idea. I'm excited to read about it. I'm excited to, obviously learn more, but yeah, we'll have to get a coffee or something here soon.
All right. Sounds good, Tony. Have a good day. Talk to you soon.
All right.
All right. Take care.